Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another exciting episode of Mark's Side of the Ring. I am your host, Miguel Minetti, alongside my co-host, Mr. Nick Fiorentino. What's going on, brother?
Hope I don't scare anybody with my hat. What's going on, buddy?
Not much, man, except for that, looking at that crazy hat you got on here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
It's just somebody, I think at some point thought, I'm a big horror movie fan, but somebody at some point thought I was a big Pennywise, the clown fan, and began buying me things for basically every holiday, which is all behind me. So it's just a collection of Pennywise stuff that I've gotten over the years.
Wow. Well, very fitting indeed, because as my co-host, you are the biggest clown that I do know. But we aren't here to talk about clowns today, are we? No, we are here to talk about the fallout of WWE's latest pay-per-view. We're talking about Clash of Champions. So we'll kind of just jump right on into things. We're going to be talking about a lot of different things with WWE and AEW tonight. But obviously coming off the heels of a crazy pay-per-view with a crazy ending, I want to kick it off with, what'd you think overall of Clash of Champions?
I thought the overall pay-per-view, I would give it a solid B, and I don't want to the matches that mattered, it was really a 2-match card, a 3-match card. The matches that mattered, I think, delivered. The rest of it was just filler blah. I think we kind of talked about that. So I'd give it a B. I mean, I'm glad they ended it, because I guess they could have gone two ways. They could have ended it with Roman Reigns and that angle, or they could have ended it with the ambulance match. I'm glad they ended it with what they ended it with. I think that Roman Reigns, and I mentioned it on the other podcast, hyping this show, that Roman Reigns is easily the best thing to watch on WWE programming right now. And what they've done with him, the transformation, we hadn't seen him in really a heel role yet. And we got to see that, and he is a devastating heel. So they're doing the right thing with that.
Yeah, and we're going to talk more about Roman Reigns in a little bit. But before we get there, I wanted to kind of pose a question to you, because I thought this was an awesome pay-per-view too. I'd also give it a solid B. In our predictions last week, I kind of said it was a 3-match card, and those were going to be the 3 best matches, and they certainly were. Everything else was kind of just there. They weren't bad, but they were kind of matches you would see on a Raw or SmackDown. But
yep.
I don't know about you, but I think one of the cool things about WWE is they've been delivering pretty damn hard on those pay-per-views over the last 3 months or so, especially since, well, I guess it's been 2 months since the Thunderdome era, because I think that's 3 really solid pay-per-views in a row. You had SummerSlam, which was the first pay-per-view with the Thunderdome crowd. Then you had Payback a week later, which we were like, how the hell are they going to put off another pay-per-view? Which they did, and they were successful at it. Then Clash of Champions. So, I don't know, you agree with me? You think that WWE is pretty much on the ball lately with some of their pay-per-views?
I think that the big-time matches for each pay-per-view has delivered, and I think it helps being in the Thunderdome. We've talked multiple times about the human element, and it's got to be very difficult to perform at a high level in the Performance Center. So being where they're at right now, I think has helped quite a bit. And I think that the overall matches, because, the match quality in the Performance Center wasn't bad. We had Edge and Orton in the greatest match of all time. I think that delivered. We've seen some cinematic matches and some other kind of matches that I think have delivered. But I really give a lot of credit to the Thunderdome. I think that it's just kind of hyped everybody. The energy is there. It was a great idea to do it. I guess credit the NBA for starting it, but it was a home run idea. And I think that as long as they do that, and obviously we're monitoring the NFL and they're allowing fans in, so I think it's only a matter of time before WWE starts to bring their fans in too, in open arena matches or open stadium venues. But all signs are pointing up for WWE for sure. That's definite.
One of my friends asked me the other day, and I don't think you were on this group text, but he said, "Do the wrestlers hear the pumped-in crowd noise, or is it just dead silent in there?" What do you think of that?
I think that they hear it. I think it's the same as what it is for professional sports. I think they hear it too. I think it'd be too I shouldn't say it'd be too difficult. I just think that you want the performers to feel that it's as natural as it could possibly be. You want them to be as comfortable as possible. So to pump it in just for us at home, Yeah, that's cool for us, but I think that hearing the crowd noise when you're focusing on a match, I think helps a lot for them. So I would say that it's probably going throughout the entire arena or venue.
Yeah, I said the same thing. I said there's no way that they're not hearing the crowd noise because that's what they're using to energize themselves. You could tell they're just so much more motivated. Not, I wouldn't, I shouldn't say they weren't during the performance center era, we'll call it, but they're just so much more on their ball now. I mean, with the pyro, the stage, the lights, the energy that's in there, the wrestlers look like they're just going at 110% any given show, just as if there were fans there prior to COVID. So
I agree.
I think it's been a major transformation since they started using the Thunderdome era. Kind of sticking on that topic really quick. I don't know if you saw, but Triple H was on a call and somebody had asked him, what's going to happen after the Thunderdome era? Do you see yourself touring? And what he said I thought was kind of interesting, and I don't know if you caught this or not, but he said that more likely than anything, they'll pick one arena and they'll start having some fans come inside there. So they might do another short-term contract. I'm assuming it'd be in Florida since the governor of Florida kind of said all the restrictions are pretty much at an end now. We could do 100% capacity. I'll leave it up to every business what they want to do and what they feel comfortable with. But I don't know. Do you think that's something that makes a lot of sense to maybe – and WWE would probably take a lot more precautions. There's no way they do a packed arena, but maybe a 10, 15% capacity, kind of the same what AEW is doing. Do you see that happening somewhere in Florida?
Yeah, and I think it would be interesting to see because obviously, like the touring, pre-COVID, when they were touring at every arena, that you would hope that they would come to your area, you'd buy tickets, and you would go. But now, if they go into that route, it would be interesting to see if they would do like a professional sporting team, like if they would do like a 4-event package or a 5-event package, to get the same kind of fans coming over and over again, or if it would be kind of like just as always, like, oh, the show's on Monday, buy tickets for this or buy tickets for next Monday, buy tickets for the Monday after that or the Friday after that. It'd be interesting to see how they kind of do that. It could kind of start a whole new thing until COVID's finally over, but I could see that being the case. I mean, I think we're a ways away from a packed crowd. It looks like the World Series and the AL and NLCS are going to allow 10,000 fans at their stadiums. If you're just guessing and thinking like they feel safe with 10,000 fans in a 60,000 open stadium, I would think that in a closed arena that only holds about 18,000 to 15,000, that it's probably going to be closer to maybe 5,000 maybe.
Yeah. So AEW, they pretty much advertise every week during their show now, buy tickets on our website for next week's show. And, every week consistently they're saying buy tickets for next week, buy tickets for next week. But you kind of posed a good question. What are fans doing? Is it just fans from locally from somewhere in Florida, or are people traveling, you think? I don't know. I mean, there's been no kind of data around that about whether fans are attending from other states or not. But if I had to guess, it's probably a majority of people are coming are from Florida or maybe somewhere close by like Georgia, South Carolina, those types of states. I highly doubt anyone from the Northeast is coming right now.
I think the other interesting thing to it is also like who needs who more. Like, do the fans need to be at these wrestling events more than the wrestling events need these fans there to get the television eyes and some kind of normalcy that makes us want to stop when we're flipping through the channels and say, hey, I'm going to check this out. It looks pretty cool. So I don't know. I think that they need the fans more than the fans need them. So I wonder what the ticket prices are and how all of that works.
Yeah, I should probably research that and take a look, even though I'm not going to go. It'd be cool. It'd be interesting to see.
But it is. It's interesting, like from a business standpoint, trying to understand how all of it works and how to capitalize on making the most money that they could possibly make during such a dark time.
Yeah, absolutely. But I want to get back into the Clash of Champions show. Probably undebatable, the best match of the night, and we're going to get to the Roman Reigns match, which was more of a story and an angle than it was a match. But the best pure wrestling of the night was the ladder match, the triple threat ladder match. And a lot of people on social media are calling it match of the year candidate. Do you think this was the match of the year?
Well, I think before I give you my opinion on that, I think it kind of proves the point that I made last week when I said that nothing against Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon at WrestleMania 10, but that ladder match doesn't age well in terms of like people saying it's the greatest. Yeah, it was the first one on a pay-per-view. It was at WrestleMania. It was a very good match. But you can't compare a match like that to a match like what we saw this past Sunday. And anybody who hasn't watched it, and I can't imagine you're listening to us two jabronis talk wrestling and you didn't watch it. But if you didn't watch it, you really need to go back and watch it because it was as good as it gets when it comes to a triple threat ladder match or even just a ladder match in general. And I would say that I know I had Sami Zayn, so I'm happy that the outcome was what it was. I believe you took AJ Styles, but I could be wrong.
I did.
I thought they gave it to the right guy. I thought the match overall was really good. I mean, I can't say enough good things about it. It was definitely match of the night. You say match of the year candidate, probably. I mean, I can't imagine what else would have been match of the year, honestly.
Yeah, the match itself, some of the most creative spots I've seen in a ladder match with the handcuffs, right? The fact that they put the handcuff through Jeff Hardy's earlobe is the most disgusting yet creative thing I think I've ever seen.
And then he's running around with the ladder. It was just pretty gross. I mean, I never understood those gauges. Hopefully you don't offend anybody that's listening that has them, but I never understood that, having those ear, loops like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was something different, that's for sure. It almost rivals. The only other thing I've ever seen like that was like that grotesque was the WrestleMania with Triple H and Batista when he pulled out Batista's nose ring. It kind of reminded me of that a little bit, which was another kind of like moment. But it was entertaining to say the least.
I love the fact that Jeff Hardy, like you said, was kind of dragging himself up, and there's just a ladder hanging on the other side of his ear. Real creative. And then Sami Zayn obviously tying AJ Styles to handcuffing him to the ladder himself so that he couldn't get up far enough to obviously grab for the belts there. I like what you said about Sami Zayn winning, even though I didn't pick him. I thought AJ Styles was going to win. That was my pick, and I thought WWE was going to do. But I am happy that Sami Zayn did win. I think out of all three guys, he definitely needs it the most. I think.
That's the point I was going to say, too. We don't know any of these three people personally, but we both know that Jeff Hardy and AJ Styles don't need the belt. I mean, AJ Styles he could challenge for the title, the heavyweight title, anytime. I mean, he's a heavyweight wrestler. It kind of reminded me, of when Triple H was like the champion, and then they had like that alliance with Stone Cold, and he was like the Intercontinental champion. I never understood it. It never made a lot of sense to me why, a guy like Triple H who had won the heavyweight title, and then, during that alliance with Stone Cold Steve Austin, was fighting for the Intercontinental title, never made a lot of sense. So I'd like to think, a guy like AJ Styles doesn't need it. He could fight for the title anytime he wants. And it makes more sense to me that I feel like the two of them did everything they could to make sure that Sami Zayn got over in the best possible way. And I think they did that. I mean, Sami Zayn got over big.
Yeah, it was a huge win for Sami Zayn. I'm so happy that they gave it to him. I think where he goes from here is obviously important, right? Because how do they follow up? Do they have Jeff Hardy and AJ Styles continue to chase the Intercontinental Championship, or do they have them move on and just have Sami Zayn being the most obnoxious Intercontinental heel champion of all time, running around with two belts, saying, I look damn good with these two championships. I'm the greatest Intercontinental champion of all time. I think for his character, it's something that makes a lot of sense, and they can obviously do a lot of things from it. So I'm very excited to see. I want to get your thoughts before we move on. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about Roman. I want to get your thoughts on the ambulance match between Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton. We don't have to go into the match itself, but real quickly, what were your thoughts on all of those interferences from all the guys that Orton had beaten up and taken out over the last 4 months?
I thought it was good, and I won't go too much into it. I hope it's the end of the rivalry. I liked how they kind of tied everything back together with the Big Show and Christian and HBK coming back in, and I was hoping for Edge, but I guess he still is injured and still can't do too much. But the match was what it was. I mean, it wasn't a terrible match. I just hope that they kind of move on from this. I think I've seen enough of the two of them.
Do you think? Did you like the ending when they're driving away the ambulance?
Yeah, I like I said, I thought the whole thing was kind of cool. I like how they did it. tying all the wrestlers back, that Randy Orton's injured over the last couple of weeks, I thought was cool. But I'm past this storyline. I think I'm ready for Drew McIntyre to kind of go up against. I don't know if it's Keith Lee. I'm not really necessarily sure who it is just yet, but I think I'm ready to see something different.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah, I agree. I thought it was pretty cool to see actually Randy Orton kind of tie in, or I should say Drew McIntyre, Randy Orton storyline to kind of tie in with all the guys that Orton had taken over the last few months with Big Show, Christian, Shawn Michaels, and then, of course, the cherry on top was Ric Flair driving the ambulance at the end. I just thought that was a pretty nice touch. I agree with you what you said, too, about this storyline moving on. It's not, honestly. I don't know if you got a chance to see Raw yet, but I don't know if it's going to necessarily be with Drew McIntyre, but Randy Orton actually took out all those legends at the very end of Raw. I don't know if you got a chance to check that out.
He did it again?
Yeah, they were all playing poker in a room, and Orton went in with he turned off the lights. He had night vision goggles, and he steel chaired all of them. Big Show, Shawn, Christian, and Ric Flair.
No, I didn't see that. That's hilarious.
It was actually pretty clever. It was pretty comical at the same time, too. So, nevertheless, this storyline may or may not continue. McIntyre, though, hopefully he's moving on, because I would want someone like Keith Lee to challenge for the title. I think Keith Lee is a very viable opponent. I know they've been dancing around with Keith Lee for the last month and a half or so since he came up to Monday Night Raw, but the guy has a lot of promise. I think he's a next number one contender, or if not, easily down the road. He's legitimate, right? He can go in the ring. He's one of the craziest big men I've ever seen being able to do. And I don't know if you've even seen his full potential yet, but the shit I used to see him do in NXT, I mean, he can do like somersaults off the top row for being 350 pounds. So I'm excited to see where that goes. I want to obviously talk about the biggest moment of the night, even if it wasn't the best match of the night, and that was the whole Roman Reigns Jey Uso match. I know you kind of gave us your thoughts there, so I'll kind of kick it off with mine. I thought the ending was fantastic. The fans had been clamoring for years to do something with Roman Reigns and not being shoved down our throats, and I think WWE is delivering hard on exactly what the fans have been asking for. They wanted to change with Roman Reigns, and we got to change with Roman Reigns. We got it from the second that he walked out on Sunday at Clash of Champions. He had a new ring gear, right? He was wrestling with no shirt on, with pants now, right? So he didn't have that vest on anymore. He had a different look to him. The match was somewhat competitive in the beginning, but by the end of the night, he was beating the shit out of his cousin to just continue to whoop his ass and beg and plead for his cousin to say, "Call me your tribal chief. Call me your tribal chief." So this was some of the most aggressiveness I've seen Roman Reigns ever be. What did you think of his cousin coming out and tying into it? I'm sorry, Uso's brother, Roman's other cousin, Jimmy Uso, coming out with the towel, throwing in the towel at the end and kind of hovering over his almost lifeless brother's body and saying, "You're the tribal chief, bro. Just get the hell out of here. You're the tribal chief. Okay, I'm going to call you exactly what you want." What were your thoughts on that?
I think we kind of predicted it a little bit. We talked about it, saying that his brother was going to come out. But I thought overall it added a layer to Roman Reigns, which we have not seen. I think it sets up the inevitable Mania match between him and The Rock, being who is the true tribal chief in the family. I'm not a big fan of wrestling stoppages because it should end in a pinfall or a submission. When it ends in a stoppage, it kind of seems hokey to me personally. That's just my own opinion. I know some people like it. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I thought it was fine. I mean, the way the match ended, I guess they could carry it on for maybe another month or two, like this storyline, maybe fight somebody different. I don't think necessarily it makes any sense for him to fight that Uso, and forgive me, after watching the match and everything, I still don't know if he fought Jimmy or Jey in the main event, but it was Jey, so I don't necessarily need to see him and Jey anymore in the main event. I think that ship sailed, so maybe fight Jimmy. I don't know.
Would you have their father Rikishi involved? Maybe as another layer to the
Oh
storyline.
yeah, definitely. You can get a lot of people involved in this, I think, which will culminate in The Rock in Roman Reigns kind of coming out and going to blows. But yeah, you could, I mean, bring them all out. Honestly, all the Samoans in that like family. I think they'll all kind of piece by piece come out.
And there's so many of them. I mean, obviously a lot of them have passed away, like Umaga, and I know Yokozuna was part of the family related, as well too. But there's still so many men and women in that wrestling community who aren't even in WWE, right? If you think about it, there was a guy like 15 years ago that was with Legacy. Remember, it was Orton, Cody Rhodes, Ted DiBiase, and I can't remember his name.
Yeah, I can't think of it off the top of my head either, but I know him. Yeah. I know exactly who you're talking about.
You could bring that guy back. I saw on social media, I guess the Usos have another brother. He commented that he's going to get pretty much retribution, right? No pun intended here, on Roman Reigns for what he did to his brother, right? And we'll talk about retribution in a little bit as well, too.
I hope not.
But I think this storyline can continue on. I think the biggest question is where do they go with Roman Reigns from here? Do they continue down the family path, or do they kind of veer away from it for the next couple months and kind of maybe have Roman take on a competitor like a Big E or a Matt Riddle, who I know is your boy, or maybe even do a heel versus heel with like a Sheamus or King Corbin, because there's some bad blood there from the past. If you were WWE booking, would you take this storyline, continue it down the family route, and start getting more and more family involved, and have Roman just start beating the shit out of family each and every week, and maybe on some pay-per-views? Or would you kind of dance away from it a little bit until maybe Royal Rumble season?
I can't believe I'm going to say this because obviously I was pretty against the storyline, but looking at the bigger picture and what I think it will lead to, I think you got to go a couple more months. Maybe not a couple more, maybe just October. November is, Survivor Series season. Then we're at, I guess, what's December, TLC?
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe another one, and then he can kind of go off in another feud. But I think the culmination is what we all know it's going to be. Like I said, maybe fight Jimmy in October. I'm not totally against it if we know what the bigger picture is. I mean, I've mentioned ad nauseum. I hate when I kind of know who's going to win before the match starts. But if it's part of I can tell you this, at this point right now, if all of this is to happen for The Rock to fight Roman Reigns at WrestleMania, who are you picking in that match? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that's an easy match to predict. So I think if we have to go through a couple of matches that are pretty easy to predict to get to a match that I don't think is easy to predict at all, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, but if it's for the strap, right, and this could be a great fantasy booking, do you really think The Rock's coming back to take the WWE Championship, or in this case, the Universal Championship, for one final run? Or do they somehow get the belt off of Roman between now and WrestleMania? Because, truth be told, this match doesn't need the Universal Championship attached to it.
No, no match with The Rock needs anything but The Rock.
But you don't halt Roman Reigns' title run right now, right? How do you take the belt off of him when this is going to be the hottest run of his career thus far?
Well, and it's interesting, too, because at some point, The Fiend is going to come back into the picture, too.
Right.
We saw Alexa kind of staring him down. We know they took The Fiend off of TV for a little bit. That storyline's not over, but at this point, based on what's happened so far, I don't think The Fiend versus Roman Reigns is a Mania caliber match, given where we're at right now. So I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. It's an interesting debate and an interesting topic. Do I think The Rock can win the title at WrestleMania? Yes, I do think The Rock can win the title at WrestleMania, and then probably lose it the next month after. It all depends on what his schedule is for everything that he does. But I don't think it's an easy, predictable match. I would say that of all of Roman Reigns' WrestleMania matches, not counting the tag team match with the Shield and all those other matches he was in, just purely the one-on-one matches, I think it's the least most predictable of any of his matches that he's ever had at WrestleMania.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, nevertheless, however they get there, it's going to be a hell of a match to see. obviously WrestleMania caliber. It's got main event written all over it.
Yeah.
I pray to God I'll be there in front of however many fans in late March, early April when it goes down. Overall, it sounds like you're enjoying this Roman Reigns run, and I kind of want to pose the question: if you're Vince McMahon or the WWE brass here, how long do you go with a Roman heel angle? Is this something that is a long-term booking, meaning Roman Reigns stays heel for years to come? Or do you think eventually, right, and as good as he is as a heel, and honestly, he's a hell of a heel, is this just kind of one spoke in the wheel to eventually get him to a mega face run down the future?
I mean, they flip-flop so much. Very seldom does anybody stay in one position. I'd keep him a heel for the foreseeable future. I mean, he's the best thing on TV right now in WWE, that's for sure. So I would let it ride for as long as they can. WWE sometimes has a tendency of kind of beating a dead horse and kind of driving things into the ground. So hopefully they flip the switch at the right time. They did it right with Randy Orton when Randy Orton was first the I Hear Voices guy. I mean, he started as a heel, big time heel, but they realized that the WrestleMania. What was it, 26 when he started to turn? I think it was 26. Yeah. They turned him at the right time. I mean, he was hot, red hot, and I hope they do the same thing with Roman. I think Roman eventually will become a face again, and we'll see what happens. I mean, in 2020, it's different. The Rock was heel and got over and stayed over. Right. Roman Reigns in 2020, when the fans want him to be a bad guy, now he's a bad guy, so they'll cheer him, and then he becomes a good guy, then they'll boo him again. It's just nobody knows what they want in 2020.
There's only one wrestler, I was just thinking about this, there's only one wrestler I can think of in the history of wrestling that's never changed from either a heel to a face or a face to a heel. You know who I'm thinking of?
WWE or?
Yeah, WWE.
I don't want to delay too long. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anybody who was one thing for the entire time. Oh, well, the Ultimate Warrior, I guess, technically.
Oh, yeah. All right. I never thought of Warrior. Yes, I guess Warrior was never a heel, but
I guess it would depend on how long, that's a good question, but it would depend on how long, there's got to be a criteria for longevity, like how long they were in it for this to be like criteria for a debate. But who do you have in mind?
All right. So I got somebody that's almost 20 years in the business. Wait, 20 years? No, almost 30 years in the business. Rey Mysterio. Has this man ever been a heel?
No, he probably hasn't. And now that I'm thinking about it, and now that we're talking, I don't think Ricky the Dragon Steamboat was ever a bad guy in his life.
Yeah. All right, so there's more than I thought, but Rey Mysterio is the first one that comes to mind.
Right, you're right. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I don't know, and I didn't watch him in WCW outside of just a few high flyer matches. I don't know if he was a heel in WCW, but he certainly was never a heel in WWE.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting topic to kind of do more research on down the road.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but I think we could both agree the Roman Reigns angle has been fantastic so far. I had a few buddies over. We watched the pay-per-view on Sunday here at the house, and by the time the pay-per-view signed off, we were all kind of just like, holy shit, that was way better than we thought it was going to be. I thought they were going to go with the angle. I know I had predicted that Uso was going to lay down for him, but I thought this was the better choice by far. I'm so glad they didn't do that because it just gave so much sympathy for Jey Uso while making Roman look like a complete badass at the same time. So yeah. The Tribal Chief era continues this Friday on SmackDown. Curious to see what's next for them. I think it'd be pretty cool if they get Rikishi and the rest of the family somehow. Maybe Tamina Snuka, Nia Jax. The possibilities are endless there. But I want to kind of transition and talk about what happened on Raw. And I know we talked about Randy Orton. I know you say you didn't get a chance to really dive into it yet, but I'm sure you heard about this. Retribution and Raw Underground, two of the main staples over the last month or so for Monday Night Raw, were not to be featured at all. So with Retribution, they had talked about, I think one of the members had either been in contact with somebody that contracted COVID or whatever, had a family member maybe that contacted it. I know it wasn't the wrestlers themselves, but what are your thoughts about them just kind of – they talked about Retribution, so they at least acknowledged it, but I think more interestingly enough, the Raw Underground was not to be mentioned at all. So do you think they're kind of scrapping it, or maybe they're just kind of making it a special attraction? I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think the world would be a better place if neither existed. And I don't mean to like bash the product or be a hater or anything like that. Raw Underground just made no sense to me. It never did. Like what? Like if you're really good at Raw Underground, what you fight for the title in Real Raw, and how does it translate from like Raw Underground to Real Raw? We all knew it was fake. It didn't look real. It looked a little stiffer, but it didn't really look real. And then towards the end, it just kind of looked terrible. I mean, I can't be the only one that thinks that Raw Underground was just a terrible idea. And in terms of Retribution, I think we'll look back at Retribution as being a failure. And, you know, I'm not sure the names of the guys. They all have different names and stuff. But one of the guys tweeted something along the lines of, oh, yeah, I'm a member of WWE. I have a contract with WWE, but my goal is still to, you know, end WWE. And even Chris Jericho kind of tweeted like, what? Like, it's just, it doesn't make any sense. You know, it's not the NWO. It's not Nexus. It's not fucking anything. It's just, it's not good. I still don't understand what the Retribution is. Like, they're all NXT people. They've never wrestled in WWE before, so I don't understand what the Retribution is. It makes no sense to me personally. I think they'll both go down as being pretty bad ideas.
The Retribution, I still think there's a bigger purpose to it. I still think, I mean, I'm going to say fantasy booking. I want to say CM Punk, but I think the smarter idea, the more likely idea is that Triple H is behind this. Retribution for not having Vince step down in time. I think they can go a lot of places with this. I know we talked about this last week or the week before, but I still think there's an opportunity for Triple H to eventually unveil himself as the leader of this group and pretty much say the reason he's here to destroy WWE is because he asked Vince to take over Raw and SmackDown, and Vince refused to step down even at 77, 78 years old. If that's the way they end up doing it, I'll think it's an awesome storyline. Yeah, it's a little cheesy right now. The names are the worst part. I hate to say it. I can't believe Dominic Dijakovic's new name is T-Bar, and we actually have to refer to him as T-Bar, the dumbest name I think I may have ever heard. I thought it was funny because Jericho did comment and tweet what at him, but T-Bar actually had a decent comeback. He actually screenshotted Fozzy performing at Sturgis in South Dakota, and how many people contracted COVID, and wrote what back to him, like, you're a jerk off for performing and congregating that type of crowd, you know, especially 2 months ago. So,
that's kind of a funny comeback.
Yeah, Jericho, I don't think responded to that one. For Raw Underground, yeah, I agree with you. It's definitely not something that is must television, but, you know, what if they did a special Raw Underground one day, stiff match, stiff shots between Brock and Bobby Lashley? Would you be down for that?
Yeah, because it would be real life, but that's not going to happen. Then it becomes Brawl for All, and we know what happens with that. So I don't think they want to do that. I mean, it's just, I think they I don't know whose idea it was, but it was just not a good idea. It just wasn't a good idea.
Yeah, I think they're just trying something different, and they're kind of trying to separate themselves from SmackDown and obviously AEW and NXT. Curious to see if Raw Underground makes a comeback. I'm sure Retribution will. They're just taking the time off, obviously, for necessary safety precautions and health concerns. They announced also on Raw that the draft is going to be happening a week from Friday. So what is that? That's October 10th. The kickoff for the 2020 draft will take place on Friday Night SmackDown, and will conclude on night 2 on that Monday, which I believe is October 12th or 13th. As far as the draft is concerned, give me a couple names that you'd like to maybe see it's time for them to switch to the other side. Is there anyone that jumps out at you that you say, okay, you know what, they maybe did all they could on this one show. They'd be better served to be away from somebody else by jumping on the other show?
I'm hoping that, you know, I'm always a bigger fan of when it feels a little bit more real than what it normally is. I would love to see AJ Styles back on SmackDown. You know, now against Roman Reigns with Paul Heyman an active character at this point. I think it would be pretty cool. Obviously, we know AJ Styles and Paul Heyman don't get along too well because of what they did with Gallows and Anderson. So I would like to see that. I mean, that would be one of the bigger ones. But other than that, I mean, they do these drafts so often. I mean, I defer to you, honestly. What would you like to see that we haven't already seen, a million times before?
Yeah, I don't think it's about anyone in particular, like saying, oh my God, they need to go to the other show. But I think The Fiend is a great example, right? If Roman Reigns is the main focus of Friday Night SmackDown, why not have The Fiend as the main focus of Monday Night Raw and chasing the title against Drew McIntyre?
Yeah, that would be cool. I could see that. That would be good. I don't think we've seen that before. The Fiend moving over would be okay, but I feel like Alexa Bliss is a big part of that character. So does she move too, or how does that work?
Yeah, she could. She could. And then, I'm trying to think if there's anyone else in particular that maybe they need to separate. I mean, I'd say Orton to go to SmackDown, but he's kind of now beating the piss out of the Legends on Raw. So that story may continue there, although I guess the Legends could go to SmackDown too and show up whenever the hell they please. I don't know. I mean, I think it's an opportunity for some fresh matchups. I know obviously the draft just happened last year, but do I love the idea of them doing it yearly? No, I'd probably do it every 2 years or so, but we have seen a lot of these matchups take place between Raw and, the guys on Raw and the women on Raw versus the women on SmackDown, the men on SmackDown. So it would be kind of cool to see, I don't know, like I said, comes to mind The Fiend versus Drew McIntyre for the WWE Championship. Who on Raw could fight for the Universal title? I'm trying to think. Maybe, hey, you know what? Maybe Keith Lee goes to SmackDown. Roman Reigns versus Keith Lee. That would be a cool story, right?
Yeah, that would be a pretty good story. And I got a question for you, too, actually, now that we've been thinking about it. So when they first brought up NXT to being Wednesdays, they kind of build it as the third brand. Obviously, we saw Charlotte Flair with the title on their show, Finn Balor with the title on their show. Do you think it discredits NXT at all to not be a part of the draft? Like, it kind of feels like, once again, we're looking at a group or an organization that is beneath the big two, which is Raw and SmackDown, when that wasn't always the case. And I think that they did when it was at its height trying to go up against AEW. That it was kind of the third brand, but now it definitely feels like it's back in at like 1A, 1B, and just, 2.
Maybe that's why Retribution exists, because they feel they get no respect compared to the main roster.
Maybe.
I mean, yeah. I'd like to see NXT be mixed up and they kind of have a few more guys and girls move over to NXT, but I don't think they'll do so. They have brought down talent back to NXT. I know you don't watch NXT at all, but Breezango's on NXT.
Yeah.
Obviously, you mentioned Finn Balor. He's the NXT champion. You had Charlotte Flair right at the height of COVID, right before COVID started. Right, she won the NXT Women's Championship. So they certainly have commingled some of their superstars on their Wednesday night show. But yeah, I think at this point they kind of see NXT as kind of the third brand, where Raw and SmackDown are 1 and 1A.
Yep.
We'll see, though. We'll see what happens on the draft between Raw and SmackDown. But one of the things on SmackDown that I think is one of the best storylines as well, too, and at this point, I think you'll agree with me, SmackDown's the better show than Raw. SmackDown's become the new flagship ever since moving to Fox. Yep. The other amazing storyline, in my opinion, is Sasha Banks versus Bayley, right? So we saw, I guess, a big moment on Clash of Champions is that it was unfortunate that Bayley couldn't take on Nikki Cross, because I think also Nikki Cross contracted COVID or came across somebody that did or what have you. They had an impromptu match with Asuka. It was a 5-minute garbage match. Didn't mean anything. But the real story of the night is that Sasha Banks came out and interrupted the match and took out Bayley with a steel chair. Beat the hell out of her and kind of added more fuel to that fire. I think this is definitely culminating, and I've read online too, and I have no doubt that you don't agree with me on this, that this is culminating to a match at Hell in a Cell, inside Hell in a Cell, Sasha Banks versus Bayley. What I'm reading is it's going to be the main event of the pay-per-view. So I know we've seen main events for the women before. I'll ask you, Nick. You think they deserve the main event spot for Hell in a Cell based on this storyline?
I mean, they built the storyline so long. I mean, we've been dealing with this since pre-COVID, which feels like it's been years ago. But yeah, I think this match is deserving of the main event spot. I mean, you might as well do it now because I doubt it would garner main event status in the Royal Rumble or WrestleMania. But I think for now at the Hell in the Cell, yeah, it's a way to get the women over big time at a pay-per-view that's lesser than some of the other ones. And then maybe they do something at Survivor Series too, like Team Bayley versus Team Sasha, which would be kind of cool. But I think that the storyline's been great. I think they deserve the Hell in the Cell match, and I'm looking forward to the culmination of it.
Who do you think is currently the best woman wrestler in WWE on the main roster?
Asuka.
You think so?
Yeah, Asuka. It's always going to be Asuka unless Charlotte Flair is there. To me, I mean, I just think Asuka's so good. It's just something about her. I mean, and it's so hard because Bayley is excellent. I mean, Sasha's great too. Becky Lynch, when she comes back, if she comes back, is super talented. Charlotte's the greatest to me. Love to hate her, but Asuka to me is the total package. I mean, I just think Asuka's the best.
So why don't you think they've given Asuka a main event spot on a pay-per-view yet?
Well, I mean, you can argue she won the main event at the first Women's Royal Rumble. They gave the show ended. I mean, it was ruined by Ronda Rousey, but it ended with Asuka. I mean, winning the Royal Rumble. She's the first ever Women's Royal Rumble winner. So, yeah, I don't know why she doesn't get. I don't know if she's as popular as some of the other names here in the United States, but she's popular to me. I mean, I think she's super over. I think she's super talented.
I do too, but I think they have a lot more confidence in Sasha Banks. I mean, she main evented against Charlotte Flair in Hell in a Cell 4 years ago, and she's on verge of doing it again, right? Her second Hell in a Cell match and second main event Hell in a Cell match. I mean, the storyline's just been fantastic, right? So it's not necessarily, I mean, obviously a big part of it is to do with the two competitors because they're both tremendous athletes and their storyline capability of this rivalry has been fantastic in itself. But I think WWE has the most confidence in Charlotte, Sasha, and Bayley. And obviously Becky Lynch, but now that she's gone, we'll see if and when she comes back. But yeah, I think this match is going to deliver big time. You were right in saying that this feud has been going on for, prior to COVID, which feels like 5 years ago. And if they're not going to have Roman Reigns maybe defend the title at Hell in a Cell, which I guess he doesn't have to, the clear main event should definitely be Bayley versus Sasha Banks inside Hell in a Cell because the match is going to be hard hitting. They're going to do some great spots on there. Hell in a Cell, in my opinion, was always built on kind of culminating and ending a large rivalry. I know the last couple of years they've kind of just thrown together matches inside Hell in a Cell, but I think you'll agree with me, right, that Hell in a Cell was originally designed to be the culmination of a feud.
Oh, absolutely. No question.
Yes, absolutely. So looking forward to that. Last thing I want to talk about, kind of switching over to AEW, is this last Wednesday, we saw the return of Cody Rhodes, or now just Cody, come back to AEW after taking a few months hiatus after getting destroyed by Mr. Brody Lee for the TNT Championship. So I thought it was pretty cool to see Cody's return. And, I was kind of thinking about this, and I wanted to kind of maybe debate you on this a little bit. Do you think Cody's the biggest star in AEW besides Chris Jericho?
No, I think Dean Ambrose is. I think Dean Ambrose is. He's done more in his career than Cody. He doesn't have the legacy, quote unquote, that Cody Rhodes has with the family that he has. Goldust and his father, Dusty Rhodes, obviously. But Dean Ambrose is, I think, a bigger star than Cody Rhodes right now. I think he's always been a bigger star than Cody Rhodes as well.
I love that you're calling him Dean Ambrose. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, John Moxley. Everybody knows who I mean, but yeah, John Moxley, Dean Ambrose.
So Just goes to show that WWE is superior than AEW. Just got to throw that out there.
To me, I mean, yeah, I would agree. I mean, there's always going to be WWE, you know what I mean? But I just think Jon Moxley, Dean Ambrose, whoever you want to call him, he's the second biggest star in AEW for sure.
I don't know, man. I think the company maybe feels he should be since they put the title on him, right? Chris Jericho, without a doubt, is the biggest star, right? 30 years in the business, so many accolades. Nobody's ever going to top Chris Jericho unless like someone like CM Punk maybe, or The Rock or Austin, which will never happen, go to AEW. It's got to be a huge name. Jericho's on another level. But as far as the second biggest star is concerned, I think AEW wants it to be Jon Moxley, hence why having him as the AEW champion. But I don't know, man. Something about Cody. Cody comes out and you kind of just see star power written all over him.
No, of course. Cody's super over. I mean, very popular. Obviously, the best decision, and you don't say this very often, but the best decision for him was to leave WWE at the time that he left. The Stardust thing just wasn't good. And he had kind of floundered a little bit with Legacy and, with Ted DiBiase and, all the things that they had him doing. He's definitely a bigger star than he ever was in WWE. And I think when the time comes that he goes back to WWE, he'll be a major player there. But that being said, if we're talking about just the bubble that is AEW, it's Jericho, who I would argue is you can't say a bigger star than The Rock or Austin. Definitely a bigger star than CM Punk, I think, and has done more for WWE, or has done more for professional wrestling than I think any of the other three have. I would argue that. I mean, Jericho's longevity alone and reinventing himself over and over and over. I mean, we see Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's drinking beer, coming out, doing the same shit. 10 years from now, Stone Cold comes out, he's going to be doing the same shit. The Rock, the same shit. It doesn't matter, all that stuff. But Jericho has redefined himself on so many different levels. He's reinvented himself and came up with catchphrases over and over and over again. So I would say Jericho's right up there as one of the greatest of all times.
Yeah, I agree with Jericho without a doubt. But if I had to debate, I would say the second biggest star in AEW is Cody.
What has he done that would make him a bigger star than Jon Moxley?
I don't know if it's necessarily what he's done, right? But I think it's the legacy, right, is a big part of it, right? The fact that his father's is Dusty Rhodes, his brother is Dustin Rhodes, a.k.a. Goldust. The fact that he has that Rhodes last name tied to him, right? That longevity, that lineage to his wrestling career that his father built, kind of mixed in with the fact that he's been around for 12, 13 years now. Like, the kid came into WWE back in 2007, early 2008, joined up with Randy Orton almost immediately, became a really big star, right? I mean, he was upper mid-card level when he was doing the whole face mask and, dashing Cody Rhodes and then turned into grotesque Cody Rhodes. He didn't want anyone to see his face when he broke his nose, right? And then, I think WWE dropped the ball on the whole Stardust gimmick, right? I think in theory they thought it was good, and it honestly was a good idea. They didn't know what to do with it. And when Cody said, hey, Vince, hey, whoever, I want to go back to what I want to do. I have some ideas. They kind of were like, nah, we like the Stardust gimmick. So he wrote his contract out. He went over to the independent scene. He made a lot of money for himself. He did really well, right? He kind of toured in Japan. He spent some time in Ring of Honor. And then he kind of is one of the founding fathers of AEW now. Do you think they would really make him the executive vice president if they didn't think that this guy had some serious star power? I think he might be, quote unquote, the Triple H of AEW, right? And I'm not saying that just because they have the same position, but I think that in my opinion, he desperately wants to be Triple H. You saw that in his first pay-per-view in AEW when he came out on the throne. But I like him. When he was gone, I missed him. And when he came back this past week on Wednesday, I said to myself, wow, the crowd, the 10% audience that they have, they're going nuts for him. Like, he is a huge star. And even though I like John Moxley as well too, and I love his brawler gimmick, and I think the best thing he did was leave WWE as well too, because he's so much better as John Moxley. I just don't think he has the same. He definitely doesn't have the same mic skills that Cody has. I think that's another thing too. Is Cody Rhodes has great microphone skills. If you saw the promo he cut on Wednesday, coming after Mr. Brody Lee, they're going to have a dog collar match next week on Dynamite, and I think it's going to be a fantastic match. So.
Yeah, but I think that's kind of unfair. I mean, who taught promos in WWE? Who was the promo teacher before he died?
His father.
So, I mean, it's kind of like, obviously, his pedigree, no pun intended to your boyfriend, is his pedigree is why he is who he is. And all things equal, I think the mere fact that you can debate the two kind of tells you that John Moxley's the bigger star, because John Moxley doesn't have a dad or a brother who's a Hall of Famer. I mean, John Moxley has done it just himself. And the mere fact that we can have this debate and both raise really good points kind of, I think, proves my point even more that he's the bigger star. I mean, he's done more in the business in terms of like championships, and I know championships don't really matter, and it's a work, and it's not real, but he's been more successful inside the ring than Cody. Cody has been more successful outside of the ring. I think there's no debate in that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, we could kind of continue on with this, but nevertheless, they're definitely, both of them are pretty big stars. Before we go, Nick, I wanted to kind of ask you, what are your thoughts on just Hell in the Cell in general, and then maybe the next couple of months? Hell in the Cell is the next pay-per-view, and the last pay-per-view, the Thunderdome era, and I know we kind of touched on this earlier. If you're WWE fantasy booking, right, for, I guess the next pay-per-view after that would be Survivor Series, what do you do? Do you kind of do something special? And the reason I'm asking is if you forgot, and I know we almost all forgot, it's supposed to be The Undertaker's 30th year in the business, right? So with the pandemic and given everything that's going on, would you still do a big coronation for The Undertaker if maybe there were little to no fans there?
I think that it's hard to say. I mean, that's a good question. I don't know. I think that they're going to do it regardless, because they, without these fans, yeah, it would be more special with the fans in the arena, but there's no fans in the arena and ratings aren't as high as they were or would be if there were. So I think it would be a possible ratings grab to have him come out again. Sure. The strolling bones of The Undertaker, but we'll see. I've always been a fan of the old school Survivor Series pay-per-views, the 5-on-5s. I'm hoping that they do, Survivor Series the right way, and they do it with these 5-on-5 matches. I think that'd be cool, and to culminate with The Undertaker would be a great nostalgia thing for a pay-per-view that's been around since the late 80s.
Yeah. We'll certainly be debating that more as it gets closer. I just want to get your initial take on that. But we are out of time for tonight. This was a lot of fun, kind of talking about the new Tribal Chief era and kind of the fallout for Clash of Champions. So, guys, as always, we appreciate your support. To continue following us, please give us some love on social media. You can find us on both Twitter and Instagram at True Exact Radio. Obviously, tell your friends and family about us as well, too. They can check us out. Our videos drop every Saturday morning on Spotify, iTunes, and the podcast app on iPhone. So, and I should say YouTube as well, too, on the True Exact Radio channel. So, Nick, it's been a pleasure, my friend. I hope you have a wonderful night, and I look forward to talking about more wrestling next week.
Absolutely, and I would say one more thing, and I mentioned it on the other podcast, Sharp Bets and Fantasy Sets. We have the potential, and I won't drop any names because it's not official yet, but it looks like the two of us might have a ECW Hall of Famer joining us maybe possibly in the next couple of weeks. So be on the lookout for that. There's some big things coming with Mark's side of the ring, some stars coming on to talk some wrestling, and I'm looking forward to that and looking forward to what the next couple of months of WWE and AEW are going to have in store for us.
Yes, sir. So make sure you guys tune in for some great surprises and big things down the road for Mark's side of the ring. So have a wonderful night, my friend. I'll talk to you soon.
You got it.